Americans are all about flashy. Being from the United States myself, I can definitely confirm that there is no shortage of people who can't wait to show off something. Whether it be a weird new puppy, the latest mobile device, or even their new car. Here's the thing about their cars though. In my personal observation, I've discovered that typically that kind of show off doesn't happen when a person has gone, the value route. No. You're likely to see it more when that person has spent a substantial amount of money on said vehicle. Think Audi, Mercedes, or BMW, which don't award you the same clout here in Germany, but we'll get to that in a moment. For those in the US that require this kind of validation through superficial acquisitions, once you get the thing, apparently everyone must know that you have it. It seems that the whole look at me thing has become as American as apple pie. Which brings about the question though, what would happen if one such American show-off was to move to somewhere like Germany? And while I don't think it's impossible for a show-off in the country of Germany to sleep in the same bed, I do think there are a few things to consider if you fall into that category. So everybody knows that you don't have to be insanely rich to own an expensive vehicle. Credit, financing goes a long way and is the go-to for most people. I know this because I watched it countless times while serving in the US military. And for the most part, those of you who fall into that category, Americans or US military Americans, this video will probably be the most helpful for, but this can certainly help anybody looking to move into Germany. So life has led you to moving into Germany, and you definitely want to bring your car along. Most likely you have a US spec car, so your first order of business is seeing if your car fits legal requirements to even be on German roads. It probably doesn't. And this right here is probably where you'll run into your first issue, the decision to get your car EU spec'd. I'm not a professional on this topic, but from what I've observed, most people choose to use the money they would have spent on altering the car on a decent vehicle once they arrive to Germany. The very first car, and I guess the only car that the US military shipped for me from the US to Germany was a US spec'd SUV. And if I remember correctly, it didn't require that many modifications or alterations. But I've heard stories of people having to spend out of pocket upwards of about $5,000 on alterations on their vehicle. Now, if you're only in Germany temporarily, that's gonna hardly seem worth it now, isn't it? And if I'm honest with you guys, $5,000 can get you a seriously decent vehicle here in Germany. And if you end up falling into this category, well, then that vehicle that you spent high dollar on won't even get to serve you because it'll be sitting in one place in the States while you're in Germany. So what if it all works out though? Your vehicle is EU spec'd, you get it shipped over, and you're satisfied. But when you get here and you start driving around, you notice that there's lots of places where your vehicle just doesn't fit in. And I mean that figuratively and physically. Why? Because you drive a freaking Chevy Suburban. If you don't know, Germany has moderate to smaller sized roads, and many of them. Germany has some really tight switchbacks on some of the higher elevation roads too. Roads in many neighborhoods are literally only wide enough for maybe one vehicle to fit on, of typical size for this country. You're gonna be the topic of conversation for some time to come if you end up being that person that gets their vehicle stuck on a road, especially up on a switchback. Oh my God. And if it's snowed over, forget it. Expect some unhappy times ahead, my friend. And speaking of snow, it's German law to have the appropriate tires on your vehicle depending on the season. And generally, the more expensive the vehicle, the better tire you would want. And better tires cost better money. Obviously, the better quality tire you get, the longer it'll last under ordinary circumstances. But coming from someone who had to do this for a long time, I can assure you that buying tires as often as you have to end up doing it gets exhausting. I, for one, absolutely hated it. My guess is that you will too. Especially when being flashy takes a back seat when flashy becomes too expensive to maintain. And speaking of maintenance, Germany doesn't even allow you to slack on the care of your vehicle. Whereas in the US, you can almost literally ride a car until the wheels fall off. You're going to face legal problems if your car even runs out of gas on the Autobahn here. So if your car breaks down somewhere where it impedes traffic, or in some cases if your car just looks like it's in bad shape, like it's smoking, leaking fluids, or the lights are out, or there's visible rust, you can be penalized. Yes, you, Mr. Flashy Pants. Suddenly you'll wish you hadn't neglected those engine gaskets on your flashy Mercedes because that little oil leak has evolved into a real problem for you now. And speaking of Mercedes, I mean, it should go without saying by this point, but Here in Europe, Germany specifically, Mercedes, Audi, BMW, etc., all those vehicles are made here. They are way too common for someone to feel the need to show off to another person. So when you get here and you drive a BMW, it's best you humble yourself so that you don't look like a fool who thinks he's better than everyone else because of the car you drive. Everyone has these cars over here, Mr. Flashy Pants. I guarantee you won't stand out, at least not in the way that you think you will. So what about that person that does decide to avoid being flashy? They sell their car or just leave their car behind if moving is only temporary, and also decide not to spend on an alternate vehicle here in Germany. What then are their alternatives? Well, for those that are humble enough to open their minds to it, Germany's public transportation system is a very suitable replacement for owning a vehicle. I think Germany does a really good job at making sure anyone can get to anywhere they need to go with its trains and buses. It's very different than the public transportation system in the US, outside of places like New York and California. And this is coming from someone who actually utilizes the public transportation system on a regular. I sold my car years ago in favor of public transportation, and I can only think of a handful of times where a car would have been better. Every kind of person here makes use of the train system. I've ridden along in trains full of primary school students, office workers, families, off-duty police or German military, cross-country travelers, and party folks. So any and every kind of person utilizes the train system here because it works, it's smart, and it's way cheaper than owning some expensive vehicle, even though the strikes can get kind of annoying, but we don't need to talk about that right now. Okay, so now let me be clear. I'm not dunking on the US and American culture. I simply want to point out why living a flashy lifestyle may not be conducive to someone who's looking to move into Germany. I know that the culture in the US has some work to do, as with any culture in any country. And there are far more humbled people in the US than there are show-offs. It's just that the show-offs get all the attention and the media press and stuff like that, celebrities and whatnot. But on a slight personal note, I also kind of think that this kind of lifestyle lives because of a certain dream that the US has sold some of the people there. A dream that most people won't even get to live. If you don't know what I'm talking about, have yourself a click right here, because I talk about it deeply in this video right here. And I'll talk to y'all in the next one.